Thank you first of all to the Bihar Museum and Bihar Museum 2021 for helping bring this panel together. Today we will be talking about new museums and new audiences and sharing in the virtual age. And here we brought three experts from around the world to share their knowledge in the virtual age. And the objective of our panel is to share knowledge and data about the challenges stemming from the lockdown, post-pandemic lockdown. And as well as some of the challenges that are being shared, there'll also be some information about the steps that have been taken in order to meet some of those challenges. We'll be looking at impact on in-person and digital audiences, how museums have adapted to engage audiences remotely, how effective is the hybrid experience with a physical and a digital museum, and also can it be sustained in a post-pandemic or whatever might be what we call a post-pandemic world. And also this idea of a virtual museum as opposed to a bricks and mortar museum, and visitor experience being the driver for audiences. So before we get on to that, I'm going to quickly introduce you to our three experts we have with us today. If you just bear with me a second, we have Hilary Knight, who is the Director of Digital at Tate in the United Kingdom. She leads the organization's strategy for advancing Tate's mission to promote the public's understanding and enjoyment of art out online. She also holds responsibility for Tate's digital expression online, in the galleries, and that also includes immersive projects. Second speaker we will have today is called Amardeep Behl. He's the Director and Chief Visualizer at Design Habit. Rooted in Indian culture and traditions, yet contemporary and global in outlook, Design Habit designs unique experiential storytelling spaces, which are immersive, emotional, entertaining, and educational. Today, Amardeep is going to be talking to us about one of those such projects, a museum called Virasat-e Khalsa in Anandpur Sahib, which is a handmade museum in the Punjab. And then our final speaker today will be Dr. Souraya Noujaim. She has extensive museum experience management and is currently Scientific Curatorial and Collection Management Director at the Louvre Abu Dhabi on Saadiyat Island, a cultural partnership between France and the UAE. The museum represents the dynamic nature of the contemporary Arab world while celebrating the region's vibrant multicultural heritage. So Hilary, if I may pass over to you for your presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning if, like me, you're in the UK. I thought I'd begin with just a very quick introduction to Tate, as I'm not going to presume everybody knows everything about us. So Tate is, you may or may not, actually 4 galleries. Most people are aware of Tate Modern in London. We actually have 2 galleries in Tate in London. Tate Britain, which is the first Tate, Tate Modern, and then we have 2 regional museums, one in Liverpool and one in Cornwall in St. Ives. And all of them have their own particular flavour, their own particular mission, and present our collection through slightly different lenses. And now Tate's mission overall is to increase the public's enjoyment and understanding of British art from the 16th century to the present day, and of international, modern and contemporary art. So this is a pretty large remit. And in considering that within digital, really our aim and our ambition is to deliver that mission, our overall organizational mission, through digital means. But we've also been given a more specific remit, which is within the organization to make digital part of everything we do by placing audiences at the center of experiences which span online, gallery and commerce spaces, and collaborating across departments. And I thought I'd share that with you because it sort of speaks to, as well as being creating digital experiences on our website, we also create digital experiences in our galleries when they're open. We're also responsible for generating revenue through our ticket sales, our membership subscriptions, and also we have an online shop, albeit those sitting in other departments. But also there's an ambition we have to advance the sort of digital understanding and the ability of Tate as an organization to function digitally and to think digitally, because that is, after all, where our audiences are increasingly in their lives. And as a little outline, to give you a flavour of our audiences, this is our visits to the gallery. So you can see Tate Modern takes the lion's share there. I think it's worth pointing out that 50% of our audiences annually to Tate Modern are tourists to the UK. So coming from other countries, so obviously that has taken a hit in 2020. But also, Tate Britain there with 1.6 million visitors annually, Tate Liverpool with 628,000, and St Ives with 270,000. St Ives is very much a seasonal space. It's by the coast. It's a place people like to visit on holiday. Now, if we add the website into that, and the reason I showed you the visits to the galleries first is the website actually dwarfs them. And it's actually quite hard to see the visits to the gallery when we add them into the mix. But if we take across the whole piece, people who visit Tate online and physically, the website annually in 2019 got 29 million visits. So some of those will be people who are visiting our galleries. After all, if you're visiting an exhibition, you're most likely to be booking your ticket through the website. So there's a great deal of overlap in their visitors, but it's also worth noting that the visits to the website outstrip or the visits to our galleries if you combine all four together. So there are visitors coming to our digital presence who don't come to our galleries, and we're very mindful of that. We keep in mind our remote visitor. Now, of course, we're coming to last year, 2020-21. And in the UK, we are currently in our third lockdown. And lockdown means that the galleries are closed. Most businesses are closed, all but essential businesses. And of course, you can see immediately how this has affected how people are accessing Tate. As we were open for a small portion of the year. So by and large, 99% of visits to Tate in 2020 and the first part of 2021 have been online. Now, again, there's some overlap. When we are open, our social distancing measures mean that people now have to book a ticket to enter the galleries at all. So that's to see the free collection or to visit an exhibition. But there is also a significant portion of our visits are just digital now. So we have shifted to being sort of by accident rather than design, a digital first organization. And just as a little snapshot, these are our online visits by country. So 40% of our digital visitors are from the UK, 25% from the US. The next most populous visitor is Australia. So you can see we have the Anglophone regions first, but then we are also quickly moving to reach audiences in China, Canada again Anglophone, the Philippines, and then Europe. And it's noteworthy to me that actually when we're looking at numbers of visitors, we receive more visitors from Australia, China, Canada, and the Philippines than we do. We hit those audiences before we reach Europe, which is just sort of interesting and noteworthy. And to give you a snapshot of the team, within digital, we have a content team who are making content for the website and all of our digital spaces. We have product and developments. These are people building the website, designing it. And we also work very closely with the online shop because they're on our platforms. And then when we shut down last year, just a very quick reflection. We had to work very quickly to pivot the website. We prioritized our collection and remote audiences over exhibition and visiting audiences. We published over 50 projects, pieces of content in 2020, which sort of averages out at a piece of content every 1.7 working days, very precise, 1.7, you've got to release something. We had a very successful year with Tate Kids. We have a dedicated area for children on the website, and we had record-breaking visits to that area of the website because schools were closed. So people were moving online to access creative learning resources, and some of those visitors were from teachers and parents and not just children. And we're just sort of reflecting that having to work remotely, we did all of this content production while sitting in our homes and not able to meet each other face to face by and large. So we've had to adapt and innovate in terms of our production styles, as well as in terms of where we're reaching our audiences and pushing everything online. I'm going to trot through, I'm mindful of time. So I'm going to trot through some very quick examples and then we can pick out on any specifics in the wider discussion. So we made content that aligned with exhibitions. Early on in 2020, as the galleries were closing, we sent crews in within the first 3 days of lockdown to film exhibitions that wouldn't be able to now open to the public or had only been open for a short time. This particular piece was a performance work that was due to be a live performance in the galleries as part of performance art exhibition. And the artist, in fact, changed the work. So the work itself was transformed to become, to be filmed for online audiences. So it's in fact a new work. We also filmed our Andy Warhol and Aubrey Beardsley exhibitions so that visitors who had bought tickets and were now having to get refunds could at least glimpse the exhibitions they weren't able to visit in person. Further on, as the weather improved, we have a garden in St. Ives. There was a huge sort of groundswell of people in the UK getting into gardening because they're stuck at home in a way they hadn't ordinarily been. So we tapped into that, and we have a gardener in St. Ives who looks after this sculpture garden, and he made a film for us. He was there on the ground working, literally on the ground, and he made us some content, which was also very successful. We also made content that's specifically about being isolated and being stuck at home, tapping into issues around isolation and mental health that have become preeminent conversation topics in the country, around the country. And also our podcast series and the art of comedy. I think people just wanting a bit of lightness in their lives in this dark time, reaching over 1 million people last year. We try and respond wherever we can to the wider world. We have very, very popular social media channels. And there was, of course, the huge storm beginning in the US, but we saw lots of protests in the UK as well around Black Lives Matter. It's a big issue for us. It's a big issue for our audiences and the audiences we want to reach. And we want to remain relevant to them. So we transformed areas of our website. We highlighted content by artists of color and about subjects that are pertinent to the issue of the day. But we also changed sections of our website to highlight this and really bring it to the fore. We've also done a lot of work around talks and events, and I do think this is an area we could do more in, and we want to focus on more. We live streamed a concert, a choral concert in the Turbine Hall. This was just before our second lockdown, so we just got in there. But also being able to live stream and facilitate talks and in conversations between artists. Zanele Maholi was in South Africa at the time, talking to, as we are, talking to her in conversation partner in the UK, and being able to have a really fascinating and deep and wide-reaching conversation, which is one of the things that this sort of digital space facilitates more easily and with a lower carbon footprint than flying people around the globe. I mentioned Take Kids earlier. This is a very quick glimpse. We have a gallery on Take Kids. People can come and make art with a game that we have and then post it to the gallery. And we have had huge success, but also children are making artwork that sort of tells you what's happening in their lives. You can see here a small family hike. A lot of people are having to go out and walk in their local community. Black Lives Matter is something that speaks to our young audiences as well as our adult audiences. And we also experimented with some live stream making content so that people can gather together in their homes and create and make something that speaks to our collection, speaks to the priorities, the editorial priorities of the organization, but also helps people to connect and feel connected to creativity while they're stuck at home. That was a very, very quick run through of the last 12-ish months and a little bit of a bit about Tate. So hopefully we can explore a bit more in our conversation.
Thanks, Hilary. Amardeep, may I invite you to talk to us about some of the things that, in particular, that Design Habit have done, in particular the museum that we mentioned earlier, the Virasat Museum. Thank you.
So we are a design agency. We spend our lives and our careers trying to make audience-centric spaces. We want to impact audiences. So that's been our main concern. Just like, and we feel just like in cinema, they get so impacted. We wanted museum spaces to be as impactful. So that's what we've been trying to do, So we've been trying to blend technologies with the handmade, with the artifact. To us, an artifact is but a window to a larger story. So we try to drive in the context in the story. We want the audience to get immersed in what we're trying to say. So to us, content is obviously the king. But it's really about storytelling in a certain way, but finally about making an impact so that the audiences can receive a message from the heart, rather than here. Museums work here normally, and it's always it troubles me, So it's good for the scholars, it's good for for the thinkers, but it's not sometimes good, especially in India. It's not good for. No, I want to impress upon the child, the family, across genders, across. That's what I try to do. So Virasat-e-Khalsa is a unique kind of museum that we did in the Punjab. It's not very accessible. It's about an hour and a half, 2 hours from the main city. And we haven't really, it's a government project, it hasn't really gone into social media and all of that, so people don't really know about it. But that was the attempt. What I just said is what we had to do there. And we've had a huge sort of impact. We've had people coming all the time, repeat visitors. We've had 6 million people coming in 6 years, So, and for India, that's quite big. It's probably become the largest visited museum in the country. Let me show you the video, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it. So, yeah, great.
सच्चे गुरां दे नाम ते ओदे प्यार दे पैगाम ते सच्चे गुरां दे नाम ते ओदे प्यार दे पैगाम ते कुर्बान
ਅਤੇ ਸਿੱਖੋ ਅੱਜ ਇਸ ਧਰਤੀ ਨੂੰ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਲਹੂ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਹੈ।
So it's a handmade museum, and it's a museum that can only be made in India because we have so much craft, we have so much skill, So it was such a blessing to do something of this scale in there. 65,000 square feet, totally handmade. We use every possible craft. We had no artifacts. We had choice of doing replicas. We said, no way, we're not going to do replicas in a museum like this. So we made the artifact in a way. We handmade the whole thing. It's very tech-driven. Audio guides in the multiple languages, auto trigger guides, 8 songs, it tells a story in parts and it's visualized, So it's contemporary to its time. So miniature art of the time of the 15th century is what it is. As it comes into photography starts. So, and we were afraid when we started. We were afraid, will the visitors actually get it, So were my clients, And it was amazing, the result. It works, And so what works to me really is the fact that there's a flow. There's a flow of information here. So a sort of a story, and the way technology and the entire visualization is blended, So it works at multiple levels. There's enough information on the visual, for the informed person. He will see all of that. But the less informed, you'll still get the emotion of the story. So we've had people coming 20 times, 25 times. People keep coming back. So to me, it's not a formula, but the fact that there is a way, I feel, to bring culture and to make it reach out by creating a sense of context, by layering it with some kind of context, some kind of a flow, So then the audience get it, And every time they come, they get more. They don't get the art the first time, but they get the art the third time probably, So that's the way it works. So the layers keep happening. So whatever we design, we always, all of us, we work with layers. That's what our museums are about, So we work with layers, we work with different kinds of audiences. And I really think virtual or physical, probably the way is to connect this whole thing and to make a sort of a story. That's where I'm coming from.
Thanks, Amardeep. It's very, very interesting. On the one hand, you've got Hilary telling us about almost juggernaut of the digital side of the numbers that they're gaining. And there you have a museum in the Punjab, this Virsat Museum of the film that you've just shown, and doesn't struggle to have visitors, and more importantly, has returning visitors. And we'll talk later on just about, how like this digital film, you've used technology within the museum, but also digital film has been a great advert for the museum, and how you might in the future use the virtual arena to kind of promote it more, because I don't think you could create that experience in the digital format that we've just seen. It's amazing. So next we come to Dr. Souraya Noujaim, who is, as I said, Collection Management Director over at the Louvre in Abu Dhabi. And it's not a museum that is as old as the Tate galleries are. And so I'll leave it to you, Souraya, to explain to us where you are at with your program.
Yes, so good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm sharing the screen, and yes, we are the new, I would say the new joiners in the museum community. I'm going to take you through very, very quickly, actually, throughout maybe our galleries, give you an ideas of what we do, what is our narrative, and with a special focus at the end on our digital, obviously, activity. So yes, painting the big picture and telling you that we are the first, actually, a universal museum in the Arab world. We are located in the Saadiyat cultural district, which is in a complete, I would say, evolution and construction. The very first museum in the UAE being opened, actually, and created in 1969 in the oasis town of Al Ain. As you mentioned earlier, this museum is the result of an intergovernmental agreement between the government of Abu Dhabi and the French government. So a little bit more than 10 years of a project, 3 years of an opening. The agreement signed in 2017. The museum opened to the public at the end of 2000, and the agreement signed, sorry, in 2007, opening 10 years later at the end of 2017. And here we are now in 2021, during the COVID crisis. We shut actually the museum for a few months. Actually, we've reopened quite quickly, early in July. So we had March, April, May, and June, a few months of closure. Giving you an idea of the settings, because all of you mentioned the aspect of the visitor experience and in a way the sensuality, the feelings and the emotion in the visit. And I think this is especially important for us throughout the discovery of the building, but also throughout the discovery of the collection. A building that has been created by Jean Nouvel, really a stage, I would say, in the water, with references to Arabian architecture, the souks, the lights, and the Medina. Here you are under this city museum, under the dome, a huge dome made up multiple layers of steels, creating this quite unique rain of light experience, absolutely shining drops of light in the on the building and all around this promenade in the museum. The narrative is a very special narrative, narrative or a voyage that takes the visitor from the very early beginning of humanities up to present days, where we compare actually shapes, forms, and beliefs, where we put literally the artworks in dialogue, geographically and also spatially and temporarily. It's a story which is told throughout 12 chapters, the first villages, the first great powers, civilizations, and empires. Then a shift in history with the expansion, I would say, of the universal religions throughout the world. A comparison also approach throughout beliefs, texts, sacred texts, obviously. Another moment in this exchange routes, the trade routes, where during medieval time goods, motifs, manufactured artwork was exchanged throughout the trade roads, ivory roads, silk roads, incense roads. One of our, I would say, really interesting and one of first world objects, this lion crafted around the Mediterranean by an Islamic artist. Then we take the visitors through a special display dedicated to sciences and discoveries, opening up to the first globalization, the first world empire, the rising of a new world and a new art of living, and then finishing off this promenade through art and through history with the modern and contemporary approach, where literally extra-European art dialogue with Impressionist masters. The conclusion actually is really a challenging modernities dedicated to this connected in a way modernity. And the conclusion here, really an immersive experience where the artist Susanna Fritscher, through this artwork for the air, is literally inviting the visitor to feel and to move into the art itself. So very rapidly, as you can imagine, this sum up of our narrative, but for the this panel today is really who are we? What do we do? Really, we are a museum for the community. We intend actually to present this history of the world throughout our permanent exhibition and throughout also our temporary display. A display, as you have noticed, which is very much relying into the physical emotion, the physical approach, very little or as less as I can of showcases in the gallery, and a narrative as important, I would say, as the general feel and the general promenade. During the closure, actually, obviously, we have continued the working, taking care of the object you have here, some of the preventive conservation team and technical team working. This is also a moment where we had to, I would say, speed up in terms of digital approach. As you can imagine, being a young museum is that you have to work on all fronts, if I can say, the physical aspect of the visit and also the digital aspect of it. And that's what we really worked on during the closure. We've opened the museum very much oriented into this sort of mindful approach, as everywhere, like in the world, we had to reassess our organization in terms of welcoming visitors, meaning pre-booking ticket online, organizing obviously the social distancing and so on. We have actually figured out all this really based on our on the real experience itself, and you can see here on the lower part of the screen how we were able actually to assess the visitor flow and to assess our physical and new capacity modeling. We have engaged actually with many initiative, as you can see here, one of them being also going online, going digital, going our full collection. I mean, starting to put our full collection online, which is planned to be ending at the end of this year. Everything was planned in a way. I can say that COVID has really accelerated actually the initiatives, and this is really some footage of the reopening process with all the screenings, the temporary precautions to use. So I would say we were lucky enough to be able to reopen on the 1st of July. Reopening, but also taking really the time to continue also what we were doing, the normal life of the museum, which is displaying, mounting. And in this perspective, I would say that we have adapted to the new situation. We've also been able to reopen and to install in a completely innovative manner, temporary exhibition. So for all of you who are familiar, we have to reassess the question of couriering, to do a lot of things by Zoom, and to mobilize literally the whole team, which was remarkable in terms of team bonding, and which is also remarkable in terms of new methodology to see for the future. I think none of us could have imagined before the COVID installing an exhibition via, I mean, obviously with art handlers and museum representative and expert, etc. But via Zoom, for example, when we were in contact with the lenders and so. We have also taken this time to see how we can enhance really the visitor experience and creating outdoors activities. So the COVID thing also has accelerated those initiatives. Outdoors with a kayak in the water surrounding actually the buildings, the yoga activities that can take place safely outdoor under the dome and so on. So really an activation of the spaces. I'll pass on the restaurants. Even maybe some of you have missed going to the restaurant. We've been able also with the social distancing and the outside spaces really to bring this again to our audience. In terms of digital, yes. We've created those sort of tools.
I think, Souraya, we've actually, I don't know about anybody else, but I think we've lost the sound on, oh, you're back.
I'm back?
Yeah, you're back, Souraya.
Okay, so maybe I'll skip the little film. I don't know, maybe that's why it was cut off. But this is some sort of, it was to share with you some of the initiative, digital initiative we created during the COVID in order actually to share with our audience this different initiative. A few figures in a glance in 2020, our website, which was consulted like more than 2 million times, the reach to the social media. And so really an increase in a way for us also in terms of digital attendance. On our application, actually, we provide the audio tools, details tools of the galleries. With, as I mentioned, transforming the visitor experience in highlighting the and the special focus on the collection, and same again, filming the exhibition for the wider access. Flip books provided also digitally, and that's, yeah. And some, I would say, more or less classical initiative, playlists curated to accompany the visit, obviously family times section, and films also created especially for us. In a nutshell, actually, that's some of the initiatives that we have created, and thank you.
Thank you, Souraya. I'm going to start with you, actually, Hilary. Just going back to this, analysis that you showed us of the difference pre-COVID as well and post-lockdown as well of this digital audience that you have, which is in so many more visitors than you have in the physical space. And I know that the digital strategy has been around for some time at Tate. Is how, you've got these two major streams running now, and one with a higher number of a larger audience. And I think you said at the beginning that you've become a digital first organization. How do you, or maybe you don't want to, I don't know, but how do you expect to convert some of those numbers into in-person visitors? Or is that something, because of the age that we live in isn't really going to be of interest to the majority of this. I don't know to what extent you know the preferences of the people that are coming to the digital side of tech.
So I think there are a few things to say to that. There's first of all, I think in terms of our online visitors, there are a lot of them who are also in-person visitors. So people are doing both, and as human beings, we have just lives, and digital is part of our lives. So you'll visit the website and you visit the gallery. But we also know from where people are visiting us from that there will be lots of them who aren't able to come to the gallery. And so this is really an extension of, it's not a substitution for a gallery visit. It's when you can't visit the gallery, this is another way of engaging with Tate. And in terms of converting those visitors, it's very hard to track unless you're specifically asking for ticket sales. So actually, this is one way where emerging from lockdown has actually helped us learn in some ways, because now people have to book a free ticket, but they still have to tell us who they are for purposes of track and trace to be able to visit the gallery. But before that, it was very, very hard to be able to track in a verifiable way online visits into in-person visits unless people were buying a ticket. We know, though, that online engagement is more likely to drive in-person visit. It doesn't necessarily happen right away, but being able to follow a museum on Instagram or the social media platform of your choice, being able to browse or Google, using the internet to search for artworks or artists or information about art and arriving at that museum's website, whether or not you were intending to visit that museum's website or not, is more likely to build a relationship and a sense of connection with that institution, which can result in a physical visit further down the line. So I do think that the two that there is a relationship between the two. But having said that, I think also we are very mindful of this sense of the remote audience. We're a public organisation, publicly funded in part organisation, and we hold the British art collection on behalf of the nation. So we have a remit, a requirement really to share it with them as much as possible. So we're doing several things. One is about, of course, we would like people to come and visit us in person. The galleries are physical spaces. There is a limit to how many people we can have in that space. The internet is limitless and also global. And so we're trying to have a physical in-person experience, but also a digital virtual experience. And the two sort of, there's a relationship between the two.
Okay, so just going on from there, Amardeep, going back to this discussion we briefly had earlier on, you're in a position where clearly what you're doing is attracting visitors, whereas most museums actually struggle, bricks and mortar museums struggle. And clearly that's because there's a real desire from the visitors for people to engage with what you created, the visitor experience that you created. But to some extent, you're now in a position where you're playing a bit of a waiting game. I mean, how do you hope to get audience back to the physical space? I mean, from what I can see, the comments that are being made, one of them has to be, for example, this film is a great advertisement and to attract tourism, to attract local visitors, etc. So is there any other steps? Have you got a plan for as and when you think it might, when your time is right, about bringing the returning audiences? I suspect will return if they return over and over again, but of new audiences who don't know about this amazing space.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I'm quite excited. COVID is COVID. It's taught us so many things. What I have in there is an emotional kind of experience. I have visual depictions. I have audio visuals. I have soundtracks, music tracks. I have a whole lot of material in there, and I'm journeying the audience through it. But I'm looking forward to doing another phase where I'm looking at putting this into the virtual domain. I have just the right material, In fact, it'll be easier to add apps to it and have different people go through it in different ways, It's almost like a gaming software of sorts, I'm looking at reinterpreting even the virtual domains and making it really the way it is today, because I have the material for that. I could do one base story and I could let you then navigate it your way, depending on your preference. I could do it for children, I could do it for older people, for Punjabis, for non-Punjabis, for the works. So this is perfect, So we're really excited about making this, and I really think from now onwards, even the new project that we're doing, we're trying to actually work with both.
Yeah.
Work with the physical and the virtual, and plan it right from the beginning.
Okay. On that, Amardeep, just Hilary mentioned as well the impact of the loss of tourism, particularly from Europe, because the European audiences make up quite a large number of the in-person visitors. And so how do you, this is a question actually to all of you, because there are a number of places where we're looking at virtual museums now. And really museums have played a quite large part in tourism and the economy for all our different countries where we're located. And so how do you see this challenge that's coming to some extent? Because obviously there's clearly been a lot of losses in terms of income resources with the loss of tourism. It doesn't matter if you're in the centre of London or if you're in a distant part of Punjab. So how is it that, how do you see that? For you, Amardeep, but I'll ask you specifically, are you going to focus on the digital? I like the idea of this virtual experience that you talked about, but how else might you use the digital field to actually drive these individuals, people to come from overseas? Because I'm sitting in Delhi and I didn't even know this museum existed. And from the messages we're getting, a lot of people just didn't know it existed. And thanks to the Bihar Museum Biennale, we do. So, in terms of that audience facing, something that Tate have obviously clearly been incredibly successful with, but they're a large organization, they have a lot of resources, but what do you think is the key? Is it social media? What is that? Do you think, what kind of resource, what kind of workforce is it that you need now to deliver that for the in-person visit?
Yeah, we're late. We should have planned this right when the museum opened, even before COVID. We needed to have the virtual along with the physical. We didn't do that,
Yeah.
And I regret that, but this is still time. I really think that you're right. This museum, it's owned by the government. So they were so happy with the amount of crowds they were getting. They felt no need to go and get more people. They said the house full already,
Yeah.
But this is the time, and we are discussing this with them of actually marrying the two. And it's not just virtual. We're also looking at books and other stuff that can go out with the museum, So, but virtual, surely, this is the time. And
Okay.
and I don't quite know, Hilary, you know this better, but I don't quite know how the digital will bring in the money, But surely it'll accessing it to the visitor, that should surely do. And if they access this digitally, they will surely come back to the physical also. I'm quite convinced about that,
Yeah.
Because the more you see it, the more you understand the person, you want to then meet the person. So, these are living embodiments that we're making, So their personalities we're creating. So they'll surely come back,
Yeah, I think there's no question about that. There's a big difference between buying art online and seeing art in real life. There's a big difference between watching a play live or seeing something that's recorded. Just going on from the unique museum that Amardeep has been talking about, which is very storytelling. It's very experience driven. Back to you, Souraya, with your more curated museum that you have. You have this amazing physical space. I think it's Jean Nouvel design architecture. You showed us some of the ways that the pieces of works are in there, and in terms of that bricks and mortar, the intention must be to really build up those numbers. And the pandemic's obviously had a big hit on that. How do you? I know it's difficult to predict, but is there, I know you've made it, I think, did you say, is it touch-free? It's a touch-free experience.
Yes, that's right.
Proofing, which is what you've been doing.
Yes, that's right. And it was especially for this exhibition, calligraphy, abstraction and calligraphy, that we have installed during actually the COVID a few weeks ago and months ago. And definitely we had to reconsider our mediation and digital approach, and everything basically has been adapted to the touch-free screen actually too. So the visitor gets the same gets the physical experience when he comes in the galleries. When he visits also the galleries, in terms of mediation, he has got this also gamification, I would say, approach, but everything has been anticipated without any physical point of contact. And this is something probably which will be developing in the future and expanding actually this experience in the permanent galleries, definitely.
Who's your target audience, Souraya? Who's your, because there's obviously overseas visitors, there's obviously local population.
So our target audience is definitely, I mean, I wouldn't put a hierarchy, but definitely the local audience. And I think Hilary and Amardeep will agree with me. A museum lives and is rooted in the long term if really there is this connection actually with the community, basically. We're not only there for tourists. We welcome tourists, obviously, but there is, from our perspective, also a big engagement in terms of reaching out to the community, education, and information and so on. The pictures that I showed at the end, the promenade, etc., the yoga activities, the kayaking, etc., are also part of the experience and of willingness actually to anchor the museum in the center of the community as just a simple place to go and to enjoy art, but also to enjoy the whole experience. And I agree with what you all said. It's physical, digital. It's not disconnected. It's probably two different things, but it cannot be disconnected.
I think we're all in agreement that virtual museums will not replace bricks and mortar museums. Just one final question, because we're quite short on time now. And I think, Amardeep, you sort of referred to it, and I know, Hilary, you and I have discussed it before, is when you're doing so much in the virtual digital space, you know, resources, particularly, you know, can you give any ideas or tips on how, because museums need to be accessible to all and free to enter, and whether that's online, whether that's a physical space, wherever that's possible in relation to physical spaces. But can you, you know, give a tip or anything to anybody who's watching right now who has opened a museum or is, you know, and doesn't have the kind of resources and space and all the things that Tate has, about what things they might want to try in order to not look necessarily for large amounts of funding, but, you know, some financial contribution?
You know, this is a difficult one. I'm myself trying to combat with this. You know, I think, I don't know how much money one can make from a digital visitor, you know, but we could surely complement it with a lot of material that we could sell online to him, physical things. You know, from little books to little comic books to little artifacts, objects, you know, one could do a whole, because if one has got them interested, emotionally sort of with it, then probably they will spend that extra money to bring back a little piece. Yeah. You know, because they are virtual, they may come later to the physical, but, you know, some things could be mailed to them. You know, probably that is a way to get that little extra money to support the digital work.
Absolutely.
Probably.
I mean, you're absolutely spot on. I mean, Hilary, I mean, would you like to say a few words about the extent to which an online retail experience has really assisted Tate in this?
Hugely. Yeah, our online shop is a vital part of the ecosystem that we have here. I suppose I'd also say it's not just digital artifacts, although I completely agree with Amardeep. It's you know, people being able to buy things online that connect them, that give them a sense of a tangible connection. But also you can explore sort of what I guess in gaming you'd call a freemium model. So there's a lot of material we can give out for free, but then people are willing to pay amounts to attend a talk with an artist that is on Zoom, much like we are now. Or they might pay an amount of money to participate in a course that you could pre-record using materials from your expertise that you already have within your organization. So it's about thinking about what might people pay for in real life if they're there in person, and is there a digital version of that, without trying to copy and paste real life onto the internet, which doesn't work. But there are strands there to pull on, and I would suggest to anybody who doesn't have a lot of resources, pick one and experiment with it. Pick one, try, learn from what did and didn't work, try again, and keep refining it until it works, whether that's an online course or a small online shop or something else.
It's interesting what Amardeep said earlier on about the handmade museum and about the craftsmanship that exists in India and that ability to create things. So we talk about this retail online shop. There's clearly a lot of scope for that, for doing that. Now, we've sadly run out of time, so I think it's time for me to just thank everybody. So that's Hilary, kindly joined us from the UK, Souraya, who joined us from Abu Dhabi, and Amardeep, who joined us, much like myself, from Delhi. I'd also like to thank the Bihar Museum Biennale 2021, the Bihar Museum, Dr. Alka Pandey, and everybody who's joined us today. So thank you, everyone, and hopefully next time we'll have a big in-person experience. Thank you.
That would be great.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.